I want to introduce to you my friends Aaron Rupar and Acyn Torabi, friends, business partners, and kings of clips. Each of them are going to talk a little bit about their background, and then we've got a couple of questions people have submitted ahead of time, and we'll just sort of get into it, talking about clips, how it works, the influence these guys have been able to amass, and all of that. Aaron, over to you. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Aaron, and thanks for the nice intro, Graham. It's true that we were roommates back in the day. And yeah, I've been a proud user of SnapStream going back more than 7 years now. So I'm really, man, closing on a decade. That's crazy to think about. But I think SnapStream does a great job, especially now that I'm independent, kind of simulating the experience of having a bunch of TVs on in a newsroom, which was a really cool thing when I worked at Think Progress that the newsroom there had, where they had, TVs above the newsroom that had MSNBC, Fox, CNN, any other channel that was on cable. And so all of us there in the newsroom kind of kept eyes on what was going on. If, there was some breaking news or if there was a newsworthy interview. And with the multi-viewer on SnapStream, you can kind of simulate that, just on one half of your computer monitor. If you have two monitors, works great for that. And then there really isn't anything close to it for live clipping. Graham earlier mentioned TVIs. Grabian is another product. There's some ones that are kind of like down market, but for live clipping, nothing works as well as SnapStream. And one of the really underrated features that SnapStream has is it has functionality on your mobile devices too. So there have been many times recently, as we're in this news cycle now where there are campaign events all day, or there'll be breaking news. There's been times where I was actually at a Twins game when the news broke that Biden was stepping aside, getting out of the race. And so, I was able that day to post a couple newsworthy clips from my phone, which is something that I don't think you can do on using any other service. And I'm hoping that Snapstream eventually will build out some integrations for Threads and Blue Sky Note they have video and things like that too, because the integration works great for X or Twitter, but as more people kind of, reconsider their commitment to that platform, it might be good to have that functionality elsewhere too. But, no matter
And
what platform
Aaron,
you use, yeah, go ahead.
oh, and Aaron, can you just tell us a little bit about tell us about your business. Tell us about your work. Tell us about your newsletter and the folks that
Sure.
you work with to produce that. And how and a
Yeah,
little bit about
absolutely.
how what your Twitter account and the video clips, how that plays in.
Yeah. So the quick and dirty of it is that when I was at Think Progress, I got into posting video clips because I was an editor based out of the newsroom. They needed someone to cover Trump, and so that kind of fell to me. I had covered Republicans previously when I worked at the city pages in Minneapolis, the Minnesota Republican Party. So I had some experience kind of, covering zany Republicans and the stuff that they're up to. And I'd followed Trump from afar and then, started covering him in 2016. And, as you'd imagine, a big part of that beat was watching his rallies, watching his interviews. And so I was, more of a blogger than anything, but I'd kind of, I'd edit stories for the site and then I'd write up stories about Trump. And then after we in 2017 had a training on SnapStream, one night kind of on a lark, and actually I told the story the other night to someone, and there's a number of kind of coincidences and ironies involved, given that, John Kelly is back in the news cycle right now for calling Trump a fascist because it happened in the fall of 2017. This was after the Charlottesville rally had happened. And Trump was under a lot of criticism for his response to that. That was, of course, the very fine people on both sides remark. And one night, as I was sitting at home, I had Fox News on in the background, just doing other stuff around the house, which occasionally I'd have it on just in case there was breaking news or something happened that was worth monitoring. And John Kelly was on there with Laura Ingraham, and as part of the interview, he kind of defended some of Trump's remarks about the Confederacy. Sort of made this case that it was more heritage than hate, and that people had good faith reasons to be upset over the removal of Confederate monuments. And I ended up, kind of thinking to myself, wow, this would be a good opportunity to kind of use this training we just had on SnapStream and maybe post this clip online. And you have to remember back then there were very few people and institutions doing clipping. It was kind of like a pretty wild west. And so anyway, I posted this clip of John Kelly, and by the next morning when I got up, it had something like 2 or 3 thousand retweets and was easily the most viral thing I'd ever posted. Because I think at that time I had, maybe around like 3, 4 thousand Twitter followers, something like that. And so right away, just that one clip kind of opened my eyes to the appetite that people had for posting clips like that. And of course, as the years have gone by, it's become more and more of a currency, not only on Twitter, but like even on TikTok, Instagram, all the other platforms use video clips, even if I'm not on, like for instance, TikTok, I'm not actively on there, but I know from people resharing content on other platforms that some of the clips I post make it into videos that people do. And so it's kind of become like a currency of social media. So anyway, once I started posting clips, my Twitter account started growing exponentially. And it was a really easy thing for me to integrate into my normal workflow anyway, since I was watching the White House press briefings and watching a lot of Trump. And so very quickly I was able, thanks to the tools that SnapStream has that makes it very efficient to post clips, to just kind of, integrate it into my work. And everybody at Think Progress was pleased with this because, as my Twitter account grew, it drew more traffic to the website. It was kind of a virtuous cycle that benefited everyone. And so, as the months went by, about a year later in 2018 in the fall, someone at Vox reached out to me about an opening they had there for someone covering Trump. And, I was mainly on the radar as a result of the social media work that I was doing, but hopped over to Vox, which is also a SnapStream customer, and it's just been a part of my workflow ever since. And so then after the 2020 elections, there was a lot of turnover at Vox. Ezra Klein left, Matthew Iglesias left, like a lot of the kind of original people left, and it felt like there was kind of a sea change. And at that time, Substack was offering advances to people to kind of take the plunge and go independent. And so, it was a pretty big risk, but I took the plunge. And one of the big concerns I had at the time was making sure I still had access to SnapStream so I could continue doing the type of video work that I've been doing for years at that point. And it was a very big cash outlay that first year because the product offerings weren't quite what they are now, and Graham wasn't working there. But I made it happen to get kind of a bare bones SnapStream service at the time, so I could keep doing the live threads and the clipping. And it really works out well for the type of newsletter that I have, which is called Public Notice. We cover U.S. politics 5 times a week. I write some of it, and then I have a group of contributors who are really, really excellent, who contribute to the newsletter. And so, I publish that 5 times a week. And then, social media and my account on Twitter and elsewhere helps me kind of bring new people in the door, new subscribers. And so, yeah, I mean, social media is a huge part of what I do. It really bleeds over into my writing. And of course, I cover a lot of media stuff that stems from, just the immersion that I have in right-wing media and covering Trump rallies, right side broadcasting, even like CNN last night covering the Kamala Harris town hall and some of the commentary following on CNN. So, it's kind of I feel like I've kind of been on the frontier, doing this stuff along the way, and feels like a little bit of old hat now.
Yeah,
But the cool thing again is that as people kind of branch out on different platforms, no matter where you are, people have demand for video clips, and to the
yeah,
extent that you can be kind of someone getting them out there quickly and getting them out to a big audience,
right,
it helps kind of build your own brand.
right. Thanks, Aaron.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really great. I mean, your background and moving from, job to job, coming out here to DC, where I'm located, and a couple other Snap streamers are on the East Coast. Yeah, it was really great to have you come out here, and do a totally different take on your career. And I do recall telling you every time you were thinking of, oh, I'm going to move to Vox. Oh, I could go independent. I'm like, really? You got kids? Come on, man. But, I'm really proud of you that you took the plunge and made it happen, and that you've really made it work. And that's really awesome. I'm also proud of my friend Acyn Torabi, who Aaron introduced me to 2 years ago at this point in the summer, as a fellow Clipper. And Acyn, you'll remember that I first came to you assuming that you were a journalist and that you had been, that this was your career and you had been doing this your the whole time, because you're just so good at what you do. Um, but that's not your story. And I would love for you to take the opportunity to tell your story a little bit, however you would like to. How did you get into clipping? What was your start? What was your reason for diving into this?
Yeah, hey Graham, my name is Asen. I'm a senior digital editor with with Midas Touch. Um, Basically with clipping, before clipping, I was actually in IT. I was a solutions developer. I didn't really use Twitter that much, now called X, whatever. I used it barely when it was first out. I still have tweets going back 16 years ago that I need to delete, but whatever. I started clipping. around the time of like 2019. One of my first clips was Rudy Giuliani. It took off. It had 1 million views. From that point, I expanded to covering Trump's rallies in Fox News. That eventually led to covering Trump's first impeachment. And as COVID hit, I covered the Trump administration's pandemic response and the 2020 election. That eventually led to covering the Biden administration and Congress. As Graham mentioned, I teamed up with SnapStream 2 years ago, and I saw my output and metrics increase. I was able to get the clips I needed and post them rapidly, which freed up time to capture the more potential moments. What started with one small clip has led to a pretty decent account with coverage that goes on and on of the political landscape with SnapStream. So I had a pre-written statement because I watch politicians ramble all day and I didn't want to do the same thing. Yeah, basically, I've been clipping for a while, but I've been clipping for years at this point. I've done most of the Trump rallies since, Aaron's been doing them for a while. I think since 2020, maybe I've missed maybe one of them, two of them, but I've covered most of them. I covered all the COVID press conferences. I covered all of Jen Psaki's press conferences. I covered most of the oversight committee hearings this past 2 years under the Republicans, and I cover Congress. And basically, with the help of SnapStream, I'm able to do a lot, fire off a lot of clips, and keep going without having to pause, caption it out, write it out, and post. I'm able to just caption, copy and paste, grammar check it, hit tweet, and go on to the next clip. And that's how I do it. But basically, a lot of this is possible through SnapStream.
That's awesome. Thanks, Asen. I do want to hone in on one of your more recent clips that I use as an example to explain to people what it is I do for a living and what it is that you all do. And that was the clip that you got of Trump at a religious group, basically promising them that they wouldn't have to, if they just had to vote one more time, they wouldn't have to vote anymore. And can you talk a little bit about how you saw the media reception of that, of your, like, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I don't think the media took notice of it until your clip was circulated.
Well, I mean, basically, like I posted that clip, and it just took off, and the numbers were, I, it was insane because I also posted the clip of the Donald Trump rally where he got shot at, and for some reason, that clip of him saying that you guys we won't have to have elections anymore, you won't have to vote anymore. I think that clip actually surpassed the shooting. So that was pretty insane. But it really took off. I saw it being propagated on cable news and talked about for a few days, and the impressions were I'm not even sure. Like I think I'm not looking at it now, but I know it was like over 30 million at least.
And how quickly do you know when one of your tweets are taking off? Because one of the ways that you guys drive business to us at SnapStream is you post referral links on your clips as they're taking off. But like, and this is a question for both of you, and then we'll go into some audience questions. How do you know, like, what is the feel that you, is it just like you sense it? Like, how do you have you have a sense of that when something's taken off? Or that's another
Um,
question is like, how do you know what's going to take off? Do you know when you're
well,
about to make a clip, you're like, ooh, 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 this one's gonna go.
yeah, not really. I mean, like a really good example actually from just a couple days ago that kind of illustrates how quickness can be a factor is Tim Walz had a rally, and this was the one where he said of Elon Musk that he was jumping around like a dipshit. And I was doing a thread. And so sometimes when you're doing a thread, it's easy to fall like a minute or two behind because you're kind of, you got to wait for one tweet to post before you can start the new one or upload it. So it's hard to stay in real time if you're posting a lot of clips. So Asen beat me to that clip by like 3 minutes because I went and looked because later in the evening as I was browsing Twitter, I saw Asen's tweet of the same moment, and his had like 12 million views, and mine had like 500,000. So I was like, oh, what happened here? And then I went back and saw that he beat me to it. And I thought when I posted that, that'd be a pretty good clip, but sometimes just being first can make all the difference. But it depends. Like if you find a clip of something really good that other people aren't going to have, like for instance, Chris Sununu, who was on CNN yesterday defending Trump, praising Hitler, or at least saying that people don't care was kind of more his line, is that we all know this about Trump, no one cares. I don't think anybody else had that clip, so it's up in the millions of views now. And I kind of knew as I posted that would be big. But sometimes if you're posting clips from like a rally that a ton of people are watching, it just ends up being more saturated. So there's a lot of variables involved, but especially for things that are kind of high saturation, being quick is really key to having the tweet that kind of gains traction. And then the caption is big too. Like you want to capture the right, whether it be a direct quote or more of like a OMG LOL type thing. That's more. It's hard to know what's going to hit. But you can usually tell within a couple minutes or so if something's really gaining traction and circulating widely.
Great. Yeah, no, exactly. That's awesome. Asen, what would you say on that? Do you know when a clip you have is really like gold, or like are you surprised?
Um, I guess it's 50-50, like Aaron mentioned with the dipshit clip or whatever with Elon. I had a pretty good feeling that would take off. There's some clips that you just know, like with certain Obama clips, and then there are some times where you feel it's going to take off and it doesn't really. And I'll go checking, like Aaron said, he mentioned that, like, oh, Asen posted first. I'll go and search and see if someone else posted it. It's not always that if you're the first it takes off. If you take, like I've noticed with Aaron or with Kamala HQ, they may take a little extra time with some formatting and doing it right, and they'll do a lot better than something I posted first, because like I copied and pasted and I was in a hurry and I didn't take time to like make it cleaner. But it's 50-50 most of the time. I mean, if you have a really good clip of something amazing is happening or someone sent something crazy, I mean, you'll know it'll take off. So
And yeah, and it's and are you surprised by how people engage with your content, right? Because like I think people think of you guys as left of center for sure, but like you, I think, spark conversations across the political spectrum, and what do you think about the audiences that you have and the way that folks engage with you? I did just see someone accusing Aaron of having Trump derangement syndrome, which is apparently a thing. But like how, you mix it up with a lot of people out there, across the spectrum. What is that like?
Um, you do this long enough and it's kind of part of the territory. I try not to engage as much as possible because you almost never feel good about like fighting with someone online or like getting into a flame war, especially when you have a big account like Asen and I do. There's kind of a punching down thing where, I try to be just mindful of using my platform responsibly. Twitter obviously has moved far. It's clearly moved dramatically to the right the last couple of years, and so now like the new thing on Twitter is all these like AI bots that respond to everything just for like kind of engagement farming. So I've really gone to the point now where I filter my notifications where it's basically only people that I follow. Will I be notified if they're responding or retweeting or anything like that? So it's become a little more siloed, which is regrettable. I used to kind of like that aspect of Twitter, that it was, kind of in some form, kind of a public square. At least you could kind of get a sense for different opinions and takes out there. But there's other platforms that are kind of growing, and
Mhm.
things keep on evolving.
But it's also been an avenue, I think, for both of you to sort of connect with each other, to connect with other people in this space as well. And Asen, can you also just respond to that a little bit about the community and like connecting with people and the response you get?
yeah, I basically like just like Aaron mentioned, I don't really engage with people who are, crazy people in the replies that are, just negative. Um, Sometimes it helps. Like sometimes I made mistakes, and like I'll have a typo or um, just it helps to make sure the clip is okay. If I posted something and it's off, or it's not reaching the audience the way that I thought it should, if the replies aren't necessarily, if they're not saying, oh, you spelled something wrong, it's just they don't know why I clipped it or why I posted it, and they're not responding to the reason why I posted it. I know I have a little bit of work to do there. But yeah, basically, just like Aaron said, I don't really engage with any trolls or anything like that. I just try to, focus on what I'm clipping on, ignore all that stuff, and just, just focus basically on what I'm watching.
Great, thanks. Cool. We're going to go to audience questions. There's a great question that we have. I'll put it up on the screen here. Someone sent this in early, so we wanted to prioritize that. The question is, have your social posts been successful in terms of monetization where they live, or are they merely for interaction that drives your followers to your outlets? Super thanks to Thomas Holt on that question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure people have noticed that in the threads that I do, I always promote the newsletter, trying to drive people to sign up because that is the lifeblood. So it is kind of like an earned media type thing where, you work in the promotions in the threads and, try to get new subscribers that way because, yeah, my business model is Substack. So I have the monthly and the annual subscribers and, that makes all of this possible. So, I do get comments from people who are kind of like annoyed that I include promos for the newsletter in the threads, but I'm running a business and that's the main way that I get people in the door to check it out.
I also love it when people engage with the referral links that you guys do for us because we have so many retweets and just people replying to our ads. It's very funny to me, and you guys make that possible. Asen, did you have an answer for that? I mean, can you talk a little bit about maybe your work with Midas Touch and how you transition to that role and what you're sort of because you're trying to drive traffic to Midas Touch's website as well. How do you think about that in terms of monetizing your work on Twitter?
Yeah, basically the same. It does drive traffic to Midas Touch. I I also do videos with Midas Touch that I post, from their content. But also the videos that I post are sometimes part of the stories or the articles published by Midas Touch. And they also fit in other content. So it's not just driving traffic. It's the clips themselves become part of articles. The clips themselves can become part of content on other platforms such as YouTube, and it's basically using taking clips and having multiple uses from like getting the most out of the clips that you post.
Right. Absolutely. Um, the uh, the next question that we've got then here is actually from a reporter from New York Magazine, Matt Steeb. Let me go to that one here. One sec. The question is, how do you think AI is going to affect clippers such as yourselves? Aside from the effectiveness, or yeah, the effectiveness of SnapStream, how do you keep up your mental energy slash focus to do this? And then there was also a related question. So sort of like the AI question, keep that in mind, but then also the question about how do you keep up the focus? There was another question as well in the chat, which I thought was very good, and I can't get to it at the moment. Why is it not showing up for me? But it was about like how do you all take care of your mental health when you're like watching TV all day? You're watching often very repetitive things and things that aren't necessarily super nice to be watching. I think that was a question from Gwen in the chat. Thank you, Gwen and Matt, for your questions. Asen, do you
Sure.
want to
So,
Asen, do you
oh
want to
yeah,
tackle it
Ace
for?
can start.
How do you keep do you go for long walks? How do you keep your energy and focus, and are you worried about AI taking your job?
Um, the mental health part is a long conversation. And I think, when I first started, my tolerance for watching certain things was not that high. And then over time you build up a tolerance, you become used to it. And, at first you're just like, oh wow, what they're saying this on Fox or they're saying this on wherever, and then you're just like, oh, it's just an everyday thing. They do it all the time. It's no big deal. That's not even worth clipping at this point. They repeat it so much. But with the election drawing near and everything, the vitriol's been amped up, and it's kind of stressful. And I take breaks throughout the day. I take every so often I take a 10-minute break. I step outside. At nights, I try to get in some working out or whatever. I go on long walks. And I try to watch something that's not political. Like I put it on, Netflix or any streaming service, just anything that's on, and just tune out the news for at least an hour before I go to sleep. But basically all day it's all news nonstop, and it's just that. As far as AI, I've actually thought about that because I come from a programming background, and it's possible, but it's actually kind of difficult because I mean, this is going to be part of another possible question, but one of the ways I know what to watch for is I immerse myself in Twitter. I know exactly, not exactly, but I have a good idea what the audience is looking for. And with AI, you'd have to be parsing what's coming out in the captioning. You'd have to know what Twitter's looking for. And then what Twitter's looking for is sometimes driven by what I post. So AI, when like let's say something crazy gets, done on Fox News or something that has nothing to do with what's going on Twitter, no one's looking for AI won't know to look for that. And I think, in some aspects, AI could take some of the trending stuff and clip video that's going on cable news. But I think there's a lot of stuff that you can't anticipate for, and you got to actually have a real person looking at the video for that.
Right. And that also is something that came up a lot when when we've done a case study with folks like Media Matters for America, that it's like from their perspective, and I think from both of yours and from my perspective and seeing the work that you all do, it's all about the context. It's the deep history of the people who are saying things like, what have they said before? And I think, in some ways doing these videos helps you all sort of lodge this in your head in a way that you know these things, in the future that you are doing right now, and you remember them and you can refer back to them, right? And I just find that like really remarkable. Aaron, we have a button in our product that I call the Aaron Rupar button. It uses AI. It transcribes stuff or it takes the transcription and drafts social media content. It is coming after your job, yes or no? And you're on, there you go.
I, yeah, I'm not too worried about that. For kind of some of the reasons Asen touched upon that, I think the AI stuff still, it might, I'm sure it will improve over time, but the copy still kind of reads funky to me. And then, there's also with social media, like still, if you're posting clips from SnapStream, this would actually be a great thing for you guys to evolve on. You can still only use the 280 characters. So there's kind of like space limitations too that I think AI would maybe have a bit of a difficulty accounting for. And then, as Jason was saying, sometimes a direct quote isn't always the best copy for a post. Like sometimes you need to add some context that isn't just the quote, but is background, if a claim is false, explaining why, that sort of thing. So I don't really worry about that. I think the conversation surrounding AI and clipping is pretty similar to the conversation surrounding like AI and any sort of journalism. Check back, I guess, in 10 years and we'll see. But for the foreseeable future, I'm not that worried about it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's what I figured you might say. Yeah, I use AI all the time on the job for doing coding stuff, a little bit for writing, and editing, which I find helpful. But definitely, I think it's that context and the knowledge of the political situation and what actually is going to be interesting that is what makes the content work. A couple other questions we had here. Is it easy to carry over videos to clips, threads, or Instagram if we don't want to, just go to Twitter? How do you guys find that, workflow? Currently in the product where we don't have some of those direct integrations yet.
Yeah, I use kind of a manual process where I use a site that does Twitter. It'll download Twitter videos, kind of at the push of a button, and it downloads them at a slightly lower file size than like pulling them from SnapStream does. So, I'll take the Twitter video, put it in this URL for the Twitter downloader, download it, and then upload it to, the other platforms. It's getting more and more complex because like Blue Sky, for instance, can only support 1 minute clips. So I find myself now kind of like
Mm.
tailoring clips for Blue Sky a little bit more
Mm.
because it feels like there's kind of a growing audience there. But yeah, so it's a little bit of like an old school process, and I hope that will become more user friendly, so to speak, as
And, and
time
and
passes.
and you can download them directly from SnapStream, but you have a challenge just because you have slow internet at your house at the moment,
We
right? And so
absolutely, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
you would never guess it given the work that I do, but since we've been here, which has been 4 years now, we're in a condo building where the best we can do is kind of through the phone. It's not Ethernet; it's like slower than that. So yes, I have to work around bad internet constantly.
Understood. That is sad. You got to get an upgrade. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. We have a couple of more questions from the audience. Oh, here's a great one. Ward asks in the chat, how do you manage clipping when multiple live events are happening at the same time? And I'll add to that. Do you guys check in with each other as to who's covering what, and like, uh, and talk about that sort of thing? Let's go to Asen.
Yeah, when that's been happening a lot lately. I'll have one device playing one stream. You can do multi-view on SnapStream, but I prefer to have it on multiple devices. So I'll have one device playing one event, I'll have another device playing another event, and I'll have a TV playing a third event, and then I'll switch. And I'll sometimes, sometimes I'll have one device, one TV, and two different events, and I'll have a third device to clip so I can switch between them. And sometimes me and Aaron coordinate. Like I think recently I asked him about an event and see if he already went through it. There's no point in me, like going through an event if he's already clipped it. And sometimes, we'll coordinate. Sometimes we'll both take on the same event. So.
And Aaron,
Yeah,
how do you deal with the
I would just briefly
multiples?
add my technique for that is I'll sometimes have two SnapStream windows open with the two different events, and I'll be watching one and reading the transcript of the other one. So you do have to kind of um what's the term I'm looking for? Kind of branch off your brain into different, you have to divide your attention, and it can be challenging, but yeah, I'll watch one thing, have the transcript in the other, and try to kind of monitor both that way.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah, it's very tough to do the live clipping because part of it, if you try to stay up with what's live as well while you're doing a clip, you sort of are living in the present and also trying to cover the thing that just happened, and it can be a little mind bending in that way. Um, cool. If we don't have any other questions, we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much. We'll probably go back and look and see who signed up on Team ASIN, Team Aaron, and report back to folks on what the percentages were there. If y'all want to do that free trial. So thanks everybody. Have a great afternoon.